If you are thinking about picking one up, I just want to walk you through my experience, because robot vacuums can sound great on paper and still be annoying in daily life. I have been using this one for a few weeks in a home with pets, a lot of foot traffic, and the usual stuff on the floor like shoes by the door, cords near the couch, and small toys that somehow spread everywhere. What this is, in plain terms, is a robot that vacuums and mops, then goes back to a dock that handles most of the messy maintenance for you. It is for someone who wants floors to stay consistently clean without thinking about it every day. It is also for people who deal with pet hair or long hair and are tired of digging it out of brush rolls, because that is one of the problems I always run into with robots. The first thing I noticed when I set it down is the shape. It is very low, around 3 inches tall, and the top is flat. That sounds like a small design detail, but it changes where it can clean. My older robot had a raised navigation bump on top, and it would constantly get blocked by my couch and the cabinet toe kicks. This one slides under more of my furniture. It fits under my bed frame, under a sideboard, and under a couple shelves that my other robot could never reach. Over the first week, I realized I was seeing less dust buildup in places that used to get ignored, especially along the edges under the couch. Build-wise, it feels solid in the hand. Nothing on it feels loose, and the dock is heavy enough that it does not slide around when the robot drives in and out. I like that it looks simple. It is just a matte black robot and a dock that sits against the wall. It does not draw attention, which I appreciate since it lives out in the open in my place. Setup was mostly straightforward. I charged it, installed the app, and let it do a mapping run. The mapping process took some patience, not because it is confusing, but because I had to prep the house the way you actually do for a mapping run. I picked up stray cords, moved a couple light rugs that tend to bunch up, and cleared the tightest spots so it could drive through and learn the layout. Once the map was made, it got easier, and now I rarely think about it. Day-to-day use is where this thing either earns its spot or gets returned, and for me, it has been easy to live with. I run it a lot at night. The noise is present, but it is not the kind of loud, high-pitched sound that makes it hard to relax. I can watch television while it runs in the next room. I can also schedule it and forget it, which is the whole point. The robot goes out, cleans, and comes back home without me babysitting it. Obstacle avoidance has been better than I expected. In my house, the real test is small clutter. Dog toys, a random sock, a charging cable that slips off the couch, and kid toys that end up under the coffee table. It recognizes and goes around most of it. I still saw it miss a couple tiny pieces, like small blocks tucked close to a wall or in a shadowed corner. So I would not trust any robot to handle a floor covered in small toys. But compared to what I am used to, I got far fewer stoppages and far fewer moments where I walked in and found it stuck, beeping for help. It also handles tighter navigation well. It does not just bounce around. It seems to understand where it has been, and it makes clean lines through rooms. It cleans under furniture surprisingly well for a robot, and it does not get confused just because it is in a low clearance space. Vacuuming performance has been strong in the places that matter in my home. On hard floors, it picks up grit and pet hair consistently, including near baseboards. On carpet, it does a good job pulling up hair that my pets track through the hallway. There are still a few spots on thicker carpet where it takes an extra pass to get every last hair. That is not unique to this robot. It is just something I noticed when I checked the carpet with a flashlight the next morning. One part I pay attention to is hair tangles, because I have dealt with brush rolls that turn into a wrapped mess after a few days. This robot uses a split roller design, and in my use, it really does reduce the amount of hair that gets wrapped around the brushes. I still check the rollers because hair happens, but I am not spending my weekend cutting out clumps with scissors like I used to. The hair tends to get pulled inward and collected, instead of winding around the ends. The mopping is better than the basic drag, a wet pad approach. It actually reaches closer to the edges than my older robot because the side brush and the mop can extend when it is along a wall or near a corner. That matters if you have a kitchen where crumbs and sticky spots collect right along the cabinets. It does not replace a real deep scrub when something dries onto the floor, but it keeps my floors from getting that dull, dusty film that builds up during the week. Carpet detection has been reliable for me. I have a mix of rugs and bare floors, and I did not want a robot that smears dirty water onto fabric. This one lifts the mopping parts when it hits carpet. In practice, I run a vacuum and mop routine, and it transitions from hard floor to rug without me doing anything. That makes it easier to actually use the mop feature, because I do not have to plan around rugs or remove anything ahead of time. The dock is a big part of the experience. I do not love maintaining robot vacuums, so I care a lot about how much the dock reduces that work. Here, the robot empties its dustbin into a bag in the dock. It also washes the mop pads and dries them with heat. In daily life, that means the mop pads do not sit there damp and smelling weird. With my last robot mop, I had to remember to rinse and dry pads myself, or the whole thing started to smell musty after a few days. With this one, the smell issue has been much less of a problem. You still have to do basic care. I refill the clean water and dump the dirty water. For my home, that is roughly a weekly rhythm, sometimes sooner if I run a lot of mopping. It is not totally hands-off, but it is the difference between a quick maintenance routine and a constant chore. Something I noticed during mopping is that it sometimes decides to go back and re-mop an area if the water it is pulling back looks dirty. The first time it happened, I thought it was stuck or confused, but it was just doing another pass. In a house with pets, I actually appreciate that. My floors look better in the morning when it runs overnight, especially in the entry area where dirt gets tracked in. The app is also a big piece of whether a robot fits into your life. I use it to schedule, to pick specific rooms, and to set no-go zones. The no-go zones matter in my house because there are a couple trouble areas. One is a corner with a cluster of charging cables. Another is the kid toy area. After I marked those off, I stopped worrying about it eating something it should not. The mapping tools are fairly easy once you spend a little time with them. If your home layout is complicated, you might need a few adjustments over the first week so it learns the right routes. There is also a camera on the robot. I was not sure I would care, but I ended up using it to check on my pets when I was out. It is not something I use every day, and I am mindful of privacy, but as an occasional tool, it has been useful. Now for the limitations, because there are a few. On very thick, high-pile carpet, it gets most of what I can see, but not every last hair in one run. Heavy messes sometimes need a second cleaning. The extending side brush does not always reach perfectly under very tight furniture where the robot barely fits. And the initial mapping and zone setup takes a bit of attention if you want it to be truly hands-off later. It is not hard. It is just part of owning a robot like this. Overall, living with the Roborock Saros 10R has made my floors consistently cleaner with less effort from me. The low height gets it under more furniture than most robots I have used. The obstacle avoidance cuts down on rescues. The split roller design has meant less hair maintenance. The dock takes care of the parts I normally hate, like emptying dust and dealing with dirty mop pads. It is not perfect, and I still do occasional spot cleaning the old-fashioned way, but as a daily cleaner that runs while I am asleep or out of the house, it fits into my routine in a way that feels practical. You can view detailed information about the Roborock Saros 10R in the comments section. Thank you for watching.